Here we
Let's do
are.
it.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is super exciting for me because we have so much history, probably more than anyone that's ever been on. Nostic, welcome to the show. Welcome to Demo to Limo.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to give everybody a little bit of a background story just so they can know what they're getting into, and kind of share some of our history together. Basically, we've known each other since high school. You and I were in a band, and performed all over Victoria, and we're part of Outright Cypher, like the original core of
Recorded an album in France.
recorded an album in France. This could easily be like a 7-hour show, but I want to kind of focus on some highlights and also, like, you know, make you the star of the show. Like, you know, talk about your past, how you got into music. That's always my biggest question for everybody that comes on is like, what was the main reason you got into music? Was it one thing? Was it one artist? So why don't we start there, and then we'll move into high school, and then we'll move into current, what you're doing currently.
Cool.
So yeah, tell me about like what you were doing as a kid. When do you remember recording your first song or thinking, I want to try making music for the first time?
It started out like I used to imitate stuff. Obviously, you know that. And I used to just imitate stuff all the time, and everyone in the neighborhood would kind of like gather around, and I would do like a scene from a movie, and like Austin Powers, for example, and do the whole scene and do all the voices. So I loved imitating stuff and noises, and then I heard Razel beatbox for the first time, and I was like, whoa. It was like mind-blowing to me. And then I learned to imitate it, and I kind of just like hid away, and it would practice my beatboxing in the bath, and it was like pretty quiet. And then one day when it was like loud enough, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna show some people. And yeah, around then, and I had crazy stage fright, but then when I performed If Your Mother Only Knew at the talent show, I like was so nervous. I was like puking and throwing up. I had to leave school because everybody was like, are you gonna beatbox? Are you gonna beatbox? But then when I came and did it, and when I did the part where I'm like at the same time and beatboxed and sang at the same time, like that crowd went crazy, and then the nervousness just went away, and there I was like, okay, like I'm doing this.
Was that really the first time that you had done like a big proper public performance?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
and then I would always beatbox for like rappers, and I always, like, you know, loved hip hop, and so yeah, I started to like write verses and freestyle, and then I remember my sister was dating this guy. I can't remember his name, but he was recording with these other guys, and so I decided, yeah, maybe I could ask him and go record at his place, and I did recorded a couple tracks at his place.
And were those you strictly beatboxing, or were you like writing rhymes at that point when you had decided you want to go to the studio?
The first one I did, he asked me to come to do a beatbox, and I did a beatbox, and then the second one I did was a song that I wrote, and yeah, and then I slowly started to like buy a mic and buy gear and started to record at my house and recorded like a mixtape, and then that was like right around when I met you.
Yeah. So your first solo project was The Beginning of the End, Volume 1, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking like 2006, 2005, maybe even.
Yeah, something like that.
And I get so much, I don't know, joy, nostalgia, thinking back on the technology that we had when we were first doing this compared to what we have now. And, you know,
I know, it's crazy. Yeah.
It was like the white iMac with the CD drive, GarageBand. And I remember getting excited about the expansion packs, the discs with like extra loops, like world loops and hip hop loops, and oh my god, it was so simple. Like we would just throw a compressor on, but didn't know what it did. You know what I mean? And it's come so far. So you when you first made your first solo project, and you had you know, the iMac at home, and I think you had like a mixer. Audio Technica, pretty like, you know, entry level mic. Do you remember like how difficult was it for you to get into like being an engineer as well, right? Because like, you know, you've had time, years at that point, maybe practicing beatboxing, thinking about rhyming, thinking about maybe constructing songs, but do you remember like the barrier for entry of getting into actually recording and engineering yourself? What was that like?
I remember the first biggest barrier was I had a mic. I got a mic for pretty cheap. It was like a used one. My dad helped me with the computer, and I just needed a mixer. And actually around the time I was like, I had been caught at school for smoking pot. and Mr. Rathbone, the vice principal, like, you know, suspended us or whatever. And then I was skipping school and like writing rhymes. I didn't give a shit about school. I was like, hey, I'm gonna like write rhymes and like write like an album, and then I'm gonna record it, and I would save my money for this mixer. Anyway, so Mr. Rathbone pulled me in the office. I was like, why are you skipping class so much? Like, what's going on? Are you fucking smoking weed or what? And I told him no. Like I told him the truth, and he was like, well, how much is the mixer?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, it's like $500 or whatever. And then he bought it for me that night.
Wow.
And brought it to my work.
Whoa.
And was like, yeah, no, I saw you at the talent show, and I like know what you're capable of. So just pay me back when you're famous. And I was like, okay, sweet.
That must have been such a big, like, not just confidence booster, but like a momentum shift on, honestly, like at that moment in your life.
Yeah, because like everything around me was screaming like, you know, go to school, do this, do that. And I was like, fuck the system.
Yeah.
It was like very like, didn't feel supported by, you know, especially the school system or like, you know, peers and stuff. And so, yeah, that was, and he's like, just go to class. And I was like, okay, I'm going to like
insane,
be a good person now.
Wow. So props to Mr. Rathbone, like wherever he is now, like,
who knows,
like
man.
the catalyst, honestly, that launched you to that next level. So you got the mixer, you got the spot, you know, at Fargo Place in the basement, the home studio. And, you know, obviously the songs, half of the song is the beats, right? So what was your experience level at that point like, you know, composing beats? Were you know, downloading MP3s and like famous beats? Like I know I for sure did when we started, you know, we would just like go on LimeWire and get famous beats and then make our covers over them. Was there a bit of that? Was there like you actually constructing stuff in GarageBand?
There was a bit of that, but I didn't like doing that. And I had so much like in my head because of being a beatboxer, and I know like the sound that I wanted, and then like, and it would be frustrating because I didn't like know how to make it. But it was just like trial and error, and I'm pretty sure like YouTube had just come out, so I didn't have any like tutorials or anything.
Yeah.
But I would meet other people, and they'd be like, "Oh, like this is how you do this, and this is how you do that," and I'm like, "Oh, sweet," and like, you know, learn some things that way, like through Scram and like Part Time Steve,
Totally,
E-Bone and those guys. But yeah, and then so I, you know, learned some tricks and slowly just I use a lot of like samples, and then. Yeah, just slowly made it more and more and more and more my own. But it was like slow at first, but yeah, now I feel like if I have something in my head, I can regurgitate it like almost instantly.
Yeah, you've gotten to the point where you've really refined that process of idea to, you know, manifesting a sound. I remember GarageBand being so easy to just grab loops and just like they would. Like it was like a magnet. You'd grab the loop on the side and just throw it into the arrange window. I don't even know what it's called technically, but like drums or a bass line, or like there was so much freedom and so much like the library was deep. Even like back then it was pretty deep and
very diverse.
You know, for me, it was a lot of just clicking and dragging, but then eventually for myself, I got a MIDI keyboard, right? And I was able to program and stuff. And I know for you, eventually you transitioned into getting an MPC at some point and actually sampling and stuff. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that was also kind of like trial and error too, because like around that time, I really wanted to sound like very like New York hip hop, you know, and like was kind of attached to that sound. And so I got an MPC, but yeah, like sampling, I would sample whatever. I'd sample video games, I'd sample like wind up dolls and whatever I get my hands on. But it was difficult getting those beats onto a computer because you had to like re-record and rearrange it and stuff. And so eventually I was like, what the hell is the point of this? And stopped kind of using it.
A little time consuming.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So for somebody that doesn't know what a sampler is.
A sampler essentially is a machine where you can record any like analog signal, so you can hook up to, you know, any video game machine, console, record player, tape player. I was mostly doing tapes, and you just get a little cut of something, and then you also find like a drum loop from a tape or something, or you find just drum sounds on your own, and then you make a loop essentially with the sample, and then add the drums over top of it, and then you make a bunch of different loops, and then you put it together in like a sequence.
And these sounds are triggered on this machine with little rubber
pads.
Squares.
Yeah.
So if you have one sound on one square and another sound, you can like program your drums as if you're playing, but you're using your fingers. Or if there's like a jazz sample that you want to play, you're literally playing it with your fingers in sequence of how people are going to be hearing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it may only be like a loop, and then that's just repeated after.
Yeah, like I remember I got this Russian doll, and it was like ding 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 ding, and I just like put ding 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 on one pad.
Yeah.
And then so I'd be like ding 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 ding, and then just add like over top of it, and there was my beat.
Yeah. Incredible. So simple, but I mean, it's the backbone of what hip hop was and what became.
Yeah, it's such a sound, man.
It's such a sound. My God, like DJ Premier and Pete Rock and on and on and on, right? That, and then those gritty drums, you know, and but yeah, sampling for me, something I never got into. Like that's where you and I were so different. For me, it was like really strictly MIDI based, very synthesized. But that was like the style that I found that was calling me, or that came naturally for me.
It's,
you know?
Yeah, it suited you. Yeah, and you had your like your own sound. And actually, that was like inspiring for me because I was like, I got to move away from samples and like, you know, get my own sound going. And it was cool because my grandpa, when I was little, he taught me to play the pan flute. He's like, you're gonna thank me one day. And I was like, oh, like I'm a rapper, like I don't want to play the pan flute.
Yeah.
And like, and I'm super grateful because that's so interwoven into my music, right? And I'm so thankful to have that because not a lot of people play the pan flute, right? And
no, of course. It makes me think about Stevie Wonder, like with the harmonica, like that from all the way from the beginning. It was like his voice and his harmonica, and it was like these two instruments that he knew, like he knew that harmonica the way he knew his own voice, right? And for you, like having the pan flute all those years, all the experience that you've had with it, it's really melded into your sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's something I totally, you know, lean on now when I'm doing a set. You know, I just crank the reverb on my looper and it just take people on a melodic journey and then bring the bass in and shit.
Totally.
Everyone freaks out.
But it's so dope. Like I can't think of off the top of my head like someone else that's doing that like the way you are with the hip hop thing and blending it. And you're not just doing hip hop anymore. I mean, I guess we'll get to that, but let's try and stay on track because we're going through the timeline here actually pretty nicely. So, okay, so beginning and the end, first debut album, MPC, pan flute, and then you and I met in high school, and I remember when I first introduced myself to you, I was so intimidated because we hadn't had a relationship yet, but I knew about you.
Right.
Your reputation at the time preceded you, and your brother Jose was like a really famous, like the cool breakdancer in the city. Like he was like one of the top guys, and so it was like Marco and Jose, like, oh, those guys are like really cool. Like, oh my God. And yeah, I remember like introducing myself to you, and I was like, I'm a rapper too. And I think that year we were both auditioning for the talent show, I think, and ended up both making the list or the roster for the talent show. But we also coincidentally were both enrolled in photography class.
Right.
And so after my awkward introduction, of meeting you, we ended up like a couple days later being like, oh, we're in this class together, and both had an interest for photography. And then, yeah, I mean, just very organically, we're like, we both make music, showing each other songs. Hey, we both rap. Why don't we do a song together? And I mean, the rest is kind of history. It's just like everything just fell into place like destiny. It felt like. So our very first song we recorded at your place, which
What's that
was
song called?
It was like vulgar. It was
It was really vulgar. Yeah, it was like
every now and then.
Every
Now and then. That was our first song, and it was like a beat you had made, and you showed it to me, and I had at that time like books of rhymes, like pre-writtens, and I feel like I probably had like a pre-written 16 that when you showed me the beat, I was like, oh, this will fit, right?
And then you rapped it to me, and I was like, what? And I was so stoked. Yeah, I remember that. I was like, yeah, because around that time I was such a big Mos Def Talib Kweli fan, and I was like, man, I wish like I like was in a duo like that, where like we're both like on the same level. And then I felt like that when I met you, and it was like sick, and so I was so stoked. And I remember, we recorded that, and then we recorded another track, and then I remember we just pumped out that album pretty fast.
Yeah, and exactly after that, it was we were doing it regularly. It was just like that bond and that chemistry was so strong off the jump. It's just like, yeah, we were hanging out after school, and your place at the time was the studio. I still hadn't even bought recording equipment at that point. But yeah, I mean, we did a bunch of songs, and then at what point did Felicia come into the picture? Because Felicia ended up, our friend Felicia ended up becoming like the third member of what was our group, our hip hop group called Divine Element. I can't remember if it was that same year or the year after, but
it was. I think we were like close. I think we had made like maybe 4 or 5 songs or something, and then we invited her over, and we made that song Real Love.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And we were like, oh man, this is dope. And then we're like, hey, why don't we ask Felicia to join us? And then she got on a couple other tracks on the album. And then I think timeline wise, I'm not 100% sure, but I remember it kind of going like that.
If I'm not mistaken, she also performed at that talent show that year.
She did, and that was
where we were like, we gotta meet that chick. Like,
we're like, we gotta make a track with her. Yeah. I remember.
So good. Like,
and she was like a little like band, like kind of like band girl. He's like so shy and
shy, but like had this deep hidden like incredible fire in her, And man, and then the rest is history. Like we became Divine Element and made songs, and there were so many good memories of the next couple of years. I think at the time I was in grade 11 and you were in grade 10, and then it wasn't long. Like it was like a 2-year sort of phase there at high school, but at the time it felt like an eternity. So shortly after, I got my first laptop, got the white MacBook, got the same mic as you. I started making my first solo project while we were it was called Games We Play, and I'll never forget, like, the first half of that album was lost forever because I didn't know how to back up my shit or buy an external hard drive. So for everybody watching, my God, have 2, 3, 4 hard drives.
I'm due for a backup right now. Yeah, I gotta thank you for reminding me.
In a way, it was kind of a blessing because I learned that lesson right early, right at the very beginning. And I was still learning. Like, I was still rusty. I was still super scrappy, trying tons of trial and error. So what ended up, I probably just remade some of the same stuff from memory or just from experimentation. But that was 2007, if I'm not mistaken. And then if we fast forward a little bit, I guess 2009, you were gonna have your first child that summer, and you and I ended up my parents invited you to come with us to France, and we had like a little vacation together, like a couple months before you were about to become a dad, and recorded my next album in France.
You gave me my own solo track on that album. That was so tight. I was like, what an honor.
Some of the greatest memories ever, honestly. Just like at the time we were, best friends, just inseparable, getting to spend like a month together in a foreign country with no chores, responsibilities, anything. Just, okay, hang out in France. Paul Deshaw's there, cooking us breakfast. And we're just making music every day, like
smoking
bliss.
hand rolls and going to the next village and having freaking café con crème and sauce salad or
Hennessy.
So good,
And so we made an album and had the microphone hung from the rafters in the upper room. So the upstairs of the house, it's an old, couple 100-year-old French home, and the upper level had like the ceiling exposed, so you could see like the actual woodworking and construction up there.
And you put a little hook,
and and they had like hooks, little wooden pegs that would actually like hold the roof together in certain sections, and we hung the XLR over one of the cables.
Chestnut pegs,
and I had like a house coat or some like jacket hanging on a coat hanger behind that to be like our like baffle or like our sound absorption.
Reverb,
and fucking just did the damn thing,
Also, rewinding a little bit, I think it was 2008 is when I released Beginning of the End Volume 2.
Yeah.
And that was super fun. That album for me was like a big, because it was all my own beats. There was no one else's beats on there. That was the first album where I like, and also to my friend Greg Hill, shout out to Greg Hill, he like forced me, he was like, I'm gonna make you a website and like, help you out with this. And he like forced me and pushed me to sell my music online. And I remember being in high school, like, yo, buy my album like online. And people were like, what the hell? But a lot of people bought my album like online, and I made some like decent money.
That's fucking cool. At the time, this is way before PayPal. This is way before, like, so how were people actually like just putting their credit card in? Do you remember the system of?
Yeah, like I think it was, I think so. I think it was like PayPal, or I don't even know. I don't even know. But yeah, people were
copping the album.
Yeah, and then I could just like transfer the funds right to my bank account and like take out cash.
And what were they getting? They were getting like a digital copy
that they could
put on an MP3 player or something like that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Did you do like a limited edition run of like CDs or anything like that?
I did, and I sold a lot of those out of my backpack, and it felt like it was so trippy because that was 2008, and I feel like I caught this era of like this golden era that died, where I was selling albums online, and I didn't focus too much on that because I thought it was weird, and people also thought it was weird, but it was selling. But the amount of money like I made just selling out of CDs out of my hand, like right after doing shows. But then like the next year that died, and like no one was buying albums or CDs anymore, and it was such a trip. Yeah,
it was an interesting era, like late 2000s, when the iPhone had kind of just come out. We had iTunes, was music streaming really was like
totally
in its infancy, and CDs were not on their way out, but definitely like the beginning of on their way out. And so it's tough. It's like everyone still's got a CD player in their car and at home and things like that, but it wasn't like, I don't know, cool to be slanging CDs as much.
I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure it was.
I was like, got all my money like underneath my mattress. I'm like, yeah,
that's fucking
G.
cool.
I'm gonna buy a microphone.
Cool.
I bought a microphone with my
we'll reinvest it right back in the business, in the dream. So let's touch a little bit on Outright Cypher, because I feel like that was such a big part for us.
That happened around 2008 as well.
Like our influence and just like our upbringing and a lot of the relationships, people like TikTok that we're both still close with, met at Outright Cypher, and Scram and Saint and
Stevie G and
tons of people, Witty, like I could go on, and I'm
and I ended up being in a band with Scram and Stevie. the leg up program was in a 17-piece
Oh,
band.
yeah, the leg up.
And like that was so much fun. But yeah, the cypher was. So remember, it started with just four of us, or started with Il and I and Pocket King. So like Scram and Saint and Bobby Arson and Taryn. And I think it was Scram asked me to come one day, and I was like, yeah, it's cool if I like bring some cats. And I brought you and Felicia and Lotus.
Yeah, Lotus was there.
We rolled up, and then we kind of were bringing this like conscious vibe, and it was so dope, and we were just all like freestyling, and then it just grew and grew and grew, and
every week it was like someone brought a friend,
and then I remember TikTok showing up, and then Stevie G showing up, and like it just got crazier and crazier, and it was like holy yeah. Then there was like 30 MCs there at points. Like
it got to like block party level. But
remember one time the dude brought his trailer for like the year anniversary? Were you there for that?
I don't think so.
He just brought his trailer and like mics and amps, and then we had like a full on block party.
Oh, that's insane. I don't know where I was. I was probably in Europe, but so the outright cipher, basically, for people who aren't maybe super familiar with the term cipher, it's like basically people standing in a circle, and there's either hand claps or beatboxing, or maybe someone's got a beat off of a little speaker, and we're just going in a circle, like taking turns saying our rhymes, saying our raps. And it might be like a freestyle, and then when you're done, I'll pick up off of words that you said or a train of thought, and that's where the word cipher comes from, because it's literally like one energy, one body of people.
Circle of completion.
A circle of completion.
Cipher means, yeah.
And that started off, like you said a minute ago, with 4 of us, and grew into something so big that we made like local news. We had television cameras several years later. I remember being working at Home Depot at the time, and being a fucking celebrity on Monday morning, because everyone was like, I saw you on TV, like in so Victoria, awesome. Like small town.
I got something really cool to say actually about the cipher. Is Eric and I were there one time. It hadn't started yet. We were waiting for everyone to come, and him and I saw a meteor fall from the sky and fall in the grass.
Jeez.
This piece of glass, and I still have it. And we like picked it up, and it's like, I'll send you a photo of it. It's like orange. I think I showed it to you once. You held it.
I feel like you've told me the story.
It's like, it's crazy, and it's like the North Star, the North Park Star.
Yeah,
the cipher gem. So trippy, man. Yeah.
What else happened that night? Was that
we were just like chilling and talking, and then we saw it fall, and we went and grabbed it, and kind of didn't think much of it, and later on we were like, whoa, this is trippy. Yeah. It was very serendipitous actually, with him and I starting to make music, which we'll get into in a sec. But yeah,
like a sign, an omen, maybe,
Yeah, well, I also like in ancient Egypt, they were like, the pharaohs were obsessed with space glass. There was this one area in the desert where like a bunch of it fell, and it was what was in Tutankhamun's tombs and stuff. They were like, they believed that you could channel like information from aliens and higher dimensional beings and stuff, and these things are made for people who are supposed to shift things on the planet. I didn't realize. I know, and I didn't know this. And like maybe 3 years ago, I looked this up, and I was like, oh. Okay. I was like, all right. I guess I gotta shift things.
Damn, yeah, you've been called. You've been summoned, hey?
Man, it was and then actually, that last meteor shower that happened? It happened to me again. I saw a meteor fall right next to me.
Dude, what the fuck are the chances?
I'm like, it was like, the whole sky lit up green, and it like was hot. I felt it in my back. The heat from it hurt my back.
I'm kind of not surprised, like having known you 20 plus years, like this shit, like the craziest fucking stuff happens.
But it was, anyways, to get a little off topic, but that was trippy too. I was like,
that's so cool. So at this time, people have gone their own ways. Divine Element has sort of dissolved.
Yeah, you went and took off to London to go to sound engineering school. Felicia went to LA.
Yeah.
I started to make solo music at that time. I remember at that time though, because of the outright cipher, I was so attached to trying to sound like New York hip hop. I had my daughter, Diana. We went to France, recorded that album, and then and I guess I kind of started to tell myself this story that like, oh, like there's no chance for you now, like, you know, because you have a kid and, you know, like you got to focus on that. And also like being stuck in a sound too was like, there was something about the rhythm that was just boring for me and like lacking, and wasn't excited to like rap as much. And then I think it was 2011 maybe or 10. I went to Peru and deep house music was like popping off, and it was not a thing here yet. And I remember my cousins and his friends would like sit around for hours listening to drops, and they would sit there and be like, spera, 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 which means like wait, and they would like wait for a drop. And then like when the drop was bad, they'd be like, no, 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 no. And then like they'd just be like, spera, 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 like wait. And then a drop that was good, they'd be like, see,
Wow.
and like do this for hours. And anyways, they took me to this show. I remember like, I was pretty intoxicated, did some like MDMA, I think. And I started to freestyle to this like fast tempo in Spanish. I wasn't really rapping in Spanish as much, and something just clicked. And that was kind of the moment where I like found my sound, where I was like, okay, I'm going to do like house music with like hip hop. And then Eric and I started to make music, and I kind of like showed Eric, like, yeah, we formed the group called Dionysus, and we started to make like really housey, like house music.
It was really different than what we were doing in high school.
Yeah.
Like a free 360.
Yeah. And then that also wasn't fully my sound, and then that kind of led me to the sound that I'm at now, which is more like, I guess you call it organica, is like more like Peruvian indigenous electronic sound.
Some people will call it world almost, you know.
Yeah, it is world, but
you're still rapping.
Exactly.
At the end of the day,
which makes it its own thing.
So how long did the group Dionysus last for? And because I did some work with you guys. I at least one album that I had mixed and mastered for you.
Two.
Two. Gods of Wine and yeah. So what was the structure like at the time? Obviously you're rapping. Eric, Daya you guys were both producing
together,
collaborative producing, I guess. How did that work?
It started out with us like jamming. Like he would be like late nights having some edibles and like having coca tea because I came back from Peru, and we get like hyper and stoned, and and he would play some riff on the piano, and he'd always forget what he played. He would like channel and like play some shit, and I'm like, whoa, I'm like, no, play that again. And he'd be like, I don't remember what I played, and I would sing it to him, and he'd be like, oh, okay. Then he would play it again, and then I'd beatbox, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna record this, and then that's how it started. Wow. Essentially. Yeah.
And then the stuff that you made that was finished, there was no, at least from what I remember, like actual piano on it. So were you getting him back to like reproduce things on an actual keyboard, or where was the actual elements of the music coming from?
Yeah, there was like, synth. Lots of synth stuff. He was doing a lot of synth stuff and like doing bass lines, and I was more doing like the bass lines and the drums, because that's being a beatboxer and like kind of like and he was a bit more like melodic, and that's kind of how it went down. Yeah,
very cool. Did you guys perform at all? Like, was there?
Yeah, we performed. Like, we opened up for Walshy Fire from what are they called? That Diplo's group. We opened for quite a few big names, and did a little mini tour at Dub Effects, and we did some really cool shows.
How did the studio version of what you guys were doing translate to like a performance? Because I guess you could have just played your beats and both kind of been on there with microphones. I never got a chance to see it myself. But was there like a performance element of it as well?
That's pretty much what we did. He would DJ and I would MC. And sometimes I whip out the harmonica. The pan flute wasn't like fully revived yet at that point, but yeah. And then we had a goal to like, we wanted to make 7 albums that represented their own thing, because we were trying to like embody Dionysus, which is the god of wine. That's why the album's called Gods of Wine. And we wanted to make 7 albums of this set, like that were like different genres, and like that represented the 7 things that Dionysus represent. anyways, we stopped making music together and blah blah blah. But yeah, so that's why the first one has a certain sound and the second one has.
They're very themed.
Yeah, they're very themed. Yeah, totally. And but yeah, performing, it was just DJ MC vibes. Okay. But it was more electronic, and we were trying to work towards more like mixing songs together and having not like one whole kind of set thing. And then, we ended up separating and not making music, but yeah.
And then after that, it became Nostic and Nikki. Can we get into that a little bit as well?
Yeah.
That was like your next endeavor musical group, right?
So what happened is like Dionysus was phasing out a little bit, and I remember we filmed a music video. I filmed a music video in Peru for it, and Nikki was there in Peru, and Nikki's one of the most impressive just beings I've ever met, because like I met her and she wasn't dancing, and I remember the first time we danced together, I'm like, yo, like, do you dance? And she's like, well, I used to, but I can't really pursue it professionally anymore because like I stopped for 2 years. And I'm like, yo, that's like a bunch of bullshit. And I showed her like shuffling and like house music, and then she was doing it in 4 months. And then she's like, yeah, I want to shoot a bunch of videos like of me dancing. So when we were in Peru, we shot this music video for Dionysus, and she was like, I was filming videos for her on the street, and like super, super raw. We would like go to some like dingy neighborhood and like find some cool like street art and just start filming. Like, yeah. And in the process of doing that, we were having so much fun doing it. I was like, hey, like, wouldn't it be cool if you like started like DJing, and then like you could be my DJ? Cause I was, I knew I wasn't going to be making music with Eric anymore. And so this is kind of a thought that arose. And I was a bit apprehensive to it too, because I was like, it's time for me to work on some solo stuff. Like it's been a minute, and like that was like, I was trying, and it wasn't really like flowing. And then, Nikki came in the picture, and then we started to perform live together, and she learned how to DJ. She was already dancing, and so she would dance in the set. And then I showed her how to produce, and she just picked it up super quick and started making beats. And I would come home and she'd be like, hey, like, let's check this out, this thing I made. And then I would add to it. And then it was the production speed was just like, we're both Leos. So it was just like fire, king and queen. Just like, right. It was just crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you guys were like recording at home at the time as well? Or was there a studio where you were visiting to do the vocals and things like that?
At home, and then Les Sinclair Studio, which is by you, Vic.
But there were also like beyond programmed instruments in the computer, like if I'm not mistaken, like what other live instruments were you guys, when it was Nostic and Nikki, what other live instruments? Pan flute obviously would have been in there.
Yeah.
Acoustic guitar. Cajon maybe?
There was cajon in there. Yeah, I was like, because I wanted my next album to have a lot more like Peruvian roots in
traditional stuff.
Yeah, and it was always like bugging me that I wasn't doing it enough, and so I was like, all right, this is gonna be the album. We were in Peru, right, and like she was familiar, and she's a dancer, so she really understands music, and so yeah, we started to make that. But there was like alpaca bone flute.
Oh yeah.
And then a little bit of quena, which is like another flute from Peru, and so it incorporated that a little bit. And that album, the Kipus album, was kind of like a bit of almost like a tryout album, but it really worked.
Yeah, no doubt. I was lucky enough to work on that with you guys, as a mixing and mastering engineer. And that was a lot of fun because it was Logic sessions, right? So it was really streamlined. Like you would just get your song to a certain point and send me the whole session. Yeah. And that was just, it was like, okay, don't fuck it up, but take it to the finish line, maybe, like make it sparkle a little bit. And that's my preferred way of working. I think in the world of mixing, there's so many different approaches, and sometimes people are just sent raw stems and like with no verb, no compression, and it's just like, here's my demo track, here's a bunch of raw stems.
Yeah,
I don't like that as much because it's like, okay, I'm starting from negative 80, trying to get back to zero, and then working.
It's almost like more work.
Yeah. I don't know. Some engineers are like, well, you're paying me to mix it, aren't you? And there's a bit of an ego and pride about like, oh, well, I can do that. But I also, like, having been an artist myself for 20 years, I totally fucking get that how much time and effort goes into getting it to that point.
Totally.
And it's such a delicate balance of, we've heard this song 80 million times. We know exactly where all these levels are at, all these effects, the sound. For someone to have to recreate that, it's like recreating a stew with raw vegetables and meat from, you know.
I've been like, I was going to do that with this one sound engineer recently, and I was like, man, this seems like a fucking nightmare. Like, it's pretty daunting. Like, yeah. That whole process too. I remember like coming to this to track and like, and watching you mix the pan flute did so much for me because it taught me so much about, because pan flute is just straight air coming out of tubes, coming out of bamboo tubes pretty much. And it taught me so much just about like mic placement and like how much reverb and like especially live too, and like how to find that like sweet spot.
Definitely. Yeah, every instrument's different in like how you capture the tone of it, right? Like a voice is like, it's just where the mouth is. Yeah. But a guitar, like what is the mouth of the guitar is like, there's tone coming off the strings, there's tone coming off the body.
Totally.
With a pan flute, is it the front? Is it where the air comes out? Right? Like there's all these things to consider with instruments, and not only that, but then you get into microphone choice.
Totally.
Which is a whole, like, 20 years in, I'm still on like not respecting that enough. I find like where I'll rush into a recording and realize, like, it's a really expensive vocal chain, but it's still like not as good as it could be. And it's like, well, maybe the expensive mic wasn't the best choice for that source.
Yeah, like condenser mics for like, you know, instruments and drums and flutes is not the best idea.
Yeah.
It's like, sounds
yes, sometimes great. You want like the workhorse dynamic mic for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And like my friend Dallas, like who I'm in a band with now called La Chuparosa, he, like when him and I recorded, he was using all this, like, it's cool because he inherited a bunch of gear from the group Men in Hats, and like has their like old Korg thing, and it's cool. I listened to their album recently and was like, okay, like that's our sound. It's so cool to like, you know, reflect on it. Anyways, when he recorded me, he's like, oh, let's try this mic. Like, oh, let's try this mic. And he like 5 different mics.
There you go.
And then he was like, yeah, I really like how your voice sounds on this one. And like, and like, it's just, it's such a sound that like, yeah. And
I love hearing that, because that's a really good engineer that you've got right there. And it's so true, because you get the right chemistry right at the beginning. There's way, like, maybe don't even have to EQ it. Like sometimes you can't achieve the sound with EQ that you would from just pairing the right voice in the right microphone and getting the preamp in the sweet spot. You know what I mean? Like there's such a science to recording. It's crazy deep. And like I said, man, all these years of doing it still, you know, for the last 10 years, I've been focusing really hard on mixing, and my recording game is sort of still, you know, I mean, I've been recording a long time, but it's still like, it's not where my mixing is at. And then when I go back, and I record way less often these days, but when I do, I go back and I'm like, God damn, like it's not just set it up and perform. It's like, I'm skipping all these steps still, and I'm not respecting it as much as I should.
Every recording I have, I'm like, oh, I wish I did this. I'm like, oh, I should have, like, luckily I have a studio where I can kind of like take my time, and so I often go back and re-record stuff, but it's like, yeah, man,
that's why these like 1 or 2 hour recording sessions are just nonsense. Like, I'm not going to go on a big tangent here, but like, from a lot of personal experience, when I was at 2-Track all those years, like people would come in and book like an hour or like 2 hours, and 45 minutes to an hour of that would be like finding a beat and then like not even having lyrics written. And it's like a good session should be 2 hours, just like you guys are doing, pairing the right, like auditioning microphones should take an hour.
I have
or
to
more.
look at my phone when I'm going to the studio. I might as well shoot myself in the foot.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I do that, but like it's important for me to be like my verse memorized, know how my flow and my cadence is going to be, and even like my backups. I even have like an idea for my backups.
Yeah.
When I go to the studio, and then I'm not wasting time. I just go there and like,
Well,
Clint Eastwood that shit.
110%. And you're a veteran at this point. You've got years of experience, and this is a job for you. I mean, this is your livelihood, right? And you're doing it like a professional. That's the way to do it. It's still a vocation that you've chosen, and it's fun, and we're lucky to do this, but we've got to like treat it like a job, like be a professional. Preparation is just such an underappreciated, underutilized thing.
You're not going to not practice for
lack
a
of a better
show.
word. But yeah, like, are you going to go to a show and not like practice, memorize your shit? I feel like I used to preach this all the time, that like studio time is a game day. Like you practice at home. You guys practice, like the gym is at home. You don't come to the studio and fucking warm up and spend 45 minutes like writing lyrics on your phone. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not how I see it. That's from,
I remember De La Soul. I can't remember what song it is. I think it's a song with Common, actually. And De La Soul says something about that, where he's saying like, MC's just going in the booth and writing right on the spot and recording, and how it's just like half-assing.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that line the other day, and I was like, yes.
Maybe if you've been doing it a long, long time and it's second nature for you, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying that is wrong, because I have seen it done. When I was at 2-Track, I got a chance to work with like big artists that were at your level, that were veterans doing it 10, 15 years, countless studio sessions under the belt, who did come in and write a song kind of in the studio in the moment. But that's only because they've put the reps in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For someone who's like newish, like, my God, just practice at home, please. Respect your own time.
It's like a trumpet player coming and like not hitting notes or something. It's like horrible. It's cringy. It's like,
yeah, what are we doing here? So, I sound like a broken record, and I probably sound harsh at times just because I'm a little jaded from all those experiences. But like, I know how I would do it. I know how people I respect would do it, and I've seen it done correctly. And it's just, it seems like a lot of common sense, though, doesn't it? At the end of the day, it's just like,
and like, if I'm going to the studio, like if I'm just doing a pretty simple flow and I'm rapping in English, sure, I could do that, or recording a hook, no problem.
Yeah,
singing's a bit different, because rapping is like singing, like how you kind of want it to sound, the key and stuff, but like there's also a key when you're rapping, and it's like how am I going to deliver the tone too? And that can, like, if you go and you get in your head about it, it can be a lot more like intense and daunting. And anyways, I could go on and on and on, but
the tone thing is big. And I've been working with a few people lately that are struggling with that big time.
Yeah.
Where it's like, they are practicing even, but then when they are on the mic and they hear it back in the headphones, it's not how it sounds in their head. And I said, do you have a setup at home? Or do you have a mic? Can you record yourself at home? No. I was like, that's what's missing.
Yeah, totally. And we're super fortunate to have had that when we were so young.
Yeah,
right?
But that's what made sense to me.
Me too. Yeah.
Like, I wasn't just going to buy a Stradivarius violin, book a studio session, and figure out how to learn how to play it at the studio.
Yeah.
That's like what most people do, though. That's like the standard.
It's like,
which is kind of fucking nuts.
It's also, I think, generational too. Like, like, hate to say this, but like, everyone wants instant gratification. They want instant, like, people post a video and they get all these likes, and like they're so used to that. And you know, it sounds cliche, but like that's, you know, that is what it is, and people don't want to do the work.
Yeah, people don't want to do the work.
Yeah, and for me, I didn't find my tone and my flow until I switched to Spanish, because I felt stuck and I was like,
Interesting.
and I was bored. And yeah, for me, like, then when I switched to Spanish, it was just so much richer and like, and the flowy, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, and it just felt so good on my mouth. And like, that sounds funny.
So then you got comfortable doing that, and then took that feeling.
Yeah.
That feeling, because the voice is an instrument. Like, that's the feeling of like getting the guitar strings right in your hand is a feeling. Your vocal tone, it as well as a comfort level, that's a feeling, right? And it's interesting that it took you to switch to another language to find that. Do you think that was? What do you think that was? Like, do you have an explanation for it?
I think I was just being more myself, because like it's funny. I've had like girlfriends and stuff be like, you're more yourself in Spanish, or like, oh, you're a completely different person in Spanish. And actually, no, I'm actually more myself in Spanish, because like, for example, like say, you know, working in a restaurant, when I'm working with someone in Spanish, so much faster and efficient. It's like, yeah, but like, just like, yeah, but it's like, whoa, in English, it's, can you pass me that? What? And it's like, you know, it's like, there's so much more like, yeah, it's just so much more efficient. First of all, the language and the syllables and the way the language is built is just faster. So to rap fast in it is easier. The enunciations are more like intricate, so it just sounds more rhythmic.
I'm not gonna lie, when I hear people speak Spanish, it sounds like one word to me, just like one long word. It's just all connected, you know?
Yeah.
But it definitely, there's like the delivery of it is faster.
And now I'm experiencing that again with writing rhymes in Quechua, which is a Peruvian indigenous language, and like incorporating that. The flows and the rhythms in that language are so trippy, and also the tones in them. Like, I've been doing some, like, I started to do it on the Gods of Wine album, but I've been doing it like a bit more intensely, and I do it a lot more live. Is like, well, I'll record like when I do layers of my voice, I'll do a normal one like this, and then I'll do another one like that, and like talk low and like put that effect over top, and then do like a high one, and then it has this sound that's so like full and rich, but with the specific language, it just, yeah, I don't know, it sounds trippy.
What you just did there was like, I use a plug-in to do that, and you just did like the Alter Boy from Sound Toys, the pitch shift, the formant, and then because you've got such good vocal control, you just like do it yourself.
And why not? You know, like
that's crazy.
Yeah, and that's another thing I wanted to do, because no one else is going to have that sound and tone, because we're going to be using. So why not just use my organic voice?
That's so cool. The more people can do that, the better off you're going to be. You want to be as unique as possible. Everyone's got those. Everyone's using the same tools. Well, I don't want to use the same tools as everyone else. Let me like adds my own special sauce as much as I can.
It's like Michael Jackson doing his like, and like, you know, doing that thing.
Nobody had those ad libs.
And he makes music like that too. He beatboxes his beats to himself. He won a court case because someone tried to sue him for Billie Jean. And he's like, no, I like wrote it myself. I like sat there and I was like, and he's like, and he just like did it in the court, and the judge is like, you won. It was so funny. I was like, yeah. And see what Timberland does that too. Beatboxes his beats.
Oh, of course.
First.
Yeah.
So yeah, funny.
Wow.
And like, yeah, and then there's someone like Anderson .Paak, who's got his own sound, his own tone, and he's because he's a drummer, and he's got like that. And he just like, he's got that drummer boy voice kind of thing going on, like the funky drummer thing, and like he just rides that and owns it, and it's so dope.
Yeah, he does ride it so well. Like, his vocal just fills in the extra space between the hats and the groove so well, because he came from a drumming background, and then he's got that like deep respect for the, like a dance, like not like riding the beat so well, like, you know. It's such a, like a dance, you know, marrying those two things so nicely. So we went Michael Jackson, Timbaland, Anderson .Paak, and right before that we were talking about beatboxing and
Talking about Nostic and Nikki too.
Nostic and Nikki a little bit. So let's rewind a little bit and get back to Nostic and Nikki. You guys are making music at home and then start to perform a little bit. Obviously, Nikki's got the dance moves at this point, also learning production, which is being
and rapping
mentored
too.
by you. And rapping.
And now she's like rapping like and she's got all these like female friends that she's been like pushing them to rap, and like all these girls are coming out of the woodwork, and I'm like, hell yeah. I'm like, this is my dream. And yeah, it's sweet. It's just really, really cool to watch. Yeah.
So where did that go? Because obviously now you're in another group.
Yeah, so we went on like a little like mini tour thing, and then we split up. She went to Costa Rica, I went to Peru, and she just got back, so we're kind of just like seeing how things go. And music's been on a little bit of a hold. But yeah, we're gonna see how things go, and would like to get back into it, maybe make another album. But in the meanwhile, I'm working on a solo album, and then also pretty much done an album with my group called La Chuparrosa,
which is your newest band. Now, there's a really cool story about how you and them got linked up, which is, well, you tell it better than me.
Well, I think you met Adonis at a family party. He's been my dad's friend since I was a kid.
Okay.
And he's this like really well-known, established Cuban artist. And I kept running into him. And he's like, hey man, I think we need to make music, you know, man. And like, I'm like, yeah, totally. And it never ended up happening. And then I met my friend Dallas, who I met through my friend Jess. And his partner, her name's Sammy. She's from Costa Rica. And they're like, I made a couple songs with them. And then I did a show with them. And then they invited me to be in the group. And I was like, hell yeah. And it was very serendipitous. And just, it's cool because like Dallas has a looper and he'll play the bass and play guitar. And we link our loopers, and I'll like beatbox and play the pan flute, and so it's all like live looping the whole set.
Very cool.
And then Adonis and Hector both play percussion, but they also do like vocals, and so it's a lot of like Latin like gang vocals.
Dope.
Very Cuban, but also very like Peruvian cumbia and very psychedelic. It's just like it's its own thing, and it's been so fun recording with them, and like. Yeah, and they're all just a bunch of really fun people and so goofy and weird. And
are you guys all in the same city right now?
Yeah, we're all in Vic.
Oh wow, okay.
Like Hector and Adonis like travel quite a bit. Sammy and Dallas are gonna go down to Costa Rica for a little bit, so we're trying to like pump out recordings as much as we can before they go. But they're coming back. Yeah,
cool,
it's
man.
Cool because the album we've been making too is like. There's a genre from Peru called chicha, which they in English they call it psychedelic cumbia, and cumbia is essentially like like dum 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 dum, kind of like slow Latin music. And actually, so the psychedelic cumbia from Peru, it has a lot of like twangy like guitar over top of it and stuff. And actually, Santana heard it when he was young, and that's where he got his style from.
Oh wow!
And so. Which I didn't know. It's just really cool. And so, yeah, so it's just fun exploring that like Peruvian sound with them. And also like they really love that music. And the two Cuban guys, they're not used to making that music as much. So it's like a treat for them. And like, but also them bringing like the whole salsa aspect is like such a treat for me. And it's just a great collaboration in my opinion.
Yeah, no kidding. Is there one primary studio, or are you guys like working at your own studios and then sending each other files, or how are the recording sessions look like?
Dallas has his own space. He actually built it. It's kind of like similar size to this, but it's got 2 stories, and it's a studio he built, and he's got all this gear and like all these mics, and just been recording there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I'm super pumped to hear that because it sounds like a total fucking explosion of sounds, and like definitely perfect fit for you and your roots, obviously, and like everything that you've done up to this point. Let's talk a little bit about like all the shows I've seen you promoting online. You've been really busy. You've been at festivals. You've been talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, so essentially, like, you know, Nikki and I did that little mini tour in Mexico, and then she went to Costa Rica, and it was crazy because, like, for, you know, whatever reasons, you know, Nikki stayed in Costa Rica, and I had these shows booked, and also getting more bookings coming in. So I asked my buddy Michael, who, you know, he's a DJ, but he's like, you know, a farmer. He's like super busy guy, and he's always like, you can't like DJ past 10 o'clock because he gets so tired, turns into a potato. And anyways, but he really stepped up, and because I was like, shit, what am I gonna do? Like, am I gonna figure out doing my sets alone, like on my looper?
Yeah, right.
And so I asked him, and he just totally stepped up, and like we made the set really our own. And I had a bunch of new tracks, and so yeah, we played at Lake Down Shakedown, which was super sweet. We did a show for the Ska and Reggae Society recently, and went and played a show up in Enderby, and yeah, it's been super fun.
So what was that like, having somebody super like fill in for the star quarterback role?
Daunting. At first it was daunting.
Like to fill in what, you know, those shoes that Nikki was filling.
Yeah, at first it was daunting, and I was like, I'm fucked. Like, I was like this. But then Michael just, like him and I really vibe together, and then we just made it our own, and I came back from Peru too with all these new flutes too, and so like when he mixes the tracks, it's cool. Like, I'll like play the flute over top of the mix, and it just like the transitions, like the transitions have gotten like cooler and smoother in their own vibe, and it's just, yeah, it's it's been really fun playing with him, and it's been like, yeah, a treat. And it's cool because like his brother was like a DJ, and his brother had like passed away, and he kind of like stopped doing it, and I was like, and I could just see in him that he really wants to do it, but it's like hard for him, so I kind of like pushed him to. And now he's all like, oh, like, let's do shows, and he's all like, it's just like sparked this thing in him, and yeah, and he's really good, and he wants to produce and stuff too, so yeah.
So that's the current status of that group, but you're also doing...
Yeah, I just call it Nostic. Like, when we book a show for that, I just call it Nostic. And,
okay.
Yeah, he goes by Tanto. Yeah, and then the other band is La Chupa Rosa.
La Chupa Rosa.
Which means the rose sucker. It's like slang for hummingbird.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys have a logo or like a font for the... I'm trying to picture like the album
we
cover.
Do, but it's not out yet. It's being designed, and
yeah.
Yeah, we're just really trying to crush recordings before they leave. It's cool because I kind of jumped on the end, and it was going to be like a really short, like kind of demo thingy. Now it's like a full album. So
sweet. Can you give us like a hint of when that might be available?
Definitely next year.
Next year. Okay.
I want to maybe say spring or something. I think there'll be some singles out before that.
Sweet.
Maybe not before the new year, but one collaboration that I'm super stoked about is I was in Peru, and I met this guy named Omir, and at a coffee shop, and we started talking about music, and he's like, oh, I produce, and I'm like, oh, me too. And this is in a place in Peru called Pisac. It's like a really sacred place. It's called the Sacred Valley, actually. And he was telling me about some of his collaborations, and I was telling him about some of my collaborations, and we both have been collaborating with some of our favorite artists. And he's like, well, like, let's make something. And so we just, at my friend's house that I was staying at, we like just recorded this pan flute line and like the drums. And then we made this, we haven't released it yet, but I'm super stoked about the track. And they're in Israel. They've been performing it like all over the place, and he's been sending me videos of like thousands of people just like jumping around to it. And I'm like, fucking sweet.
Wow.
And I'm super stoked. They're called Angata. That's their name. Very like Afro, like Israeli techno.
God damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Of all of the things that you do you think you have a favorite? Is it performing? Is it writing lyrics? Is it getting on the mic? Is it making the beat? Like being so multi-talented and so diverse. Do you have a favorite, or maybe you don't?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, all of it equally. I'd say maybe performing mostly.
I thought you might say that.
but I also love recording. I really
Yeah.
love recording and love making, a project and having a little baby and then like releasing it to
Yeah.
the world. But yeah, performing.
Yeah, performing.
Yeah. Especially I like to like surprise people. So like people are like, oh, he's a rapper, oh, he's a singer, oh, he's a pan flute player, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's beatboxing, oh, he's looping,
Honestly.
and it's like no one is expecting what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
And there's always one person in the crowd that's like, what the fuck, he's making that noise with his mouth, and it's just it's, for me, I'm like, hey, like,
Yeah.
So that's
Keep them on their toes. Keep them.
yeah, that's a treat for me. I like.
Well, you are.
surprising
I mean,
people.
you're the Leo, right? Like you're such a showman, and you just love getting the reaction out of people. But it
Yeah.
comes so naturally for you, obviously.
Thanks.
I forgot what I was gonna ask. Oh yeah. What advice would you give Nostic, the high school Nostic?
Whew.
Like you just got your mixer. What advice would your 30-year-old self tell your high school self just starting out to like not accelerate the process, but like maybe make it easier? Or
Probably take more risks and don't make excuses. Because I like held myself back when I like found out I was having a kid, which is pretty like reasonable. But there's so many. I wish I didn't hold myself back so much. And like maybe I would have been like move away from Victoria.
Yeah.
Like
stuck around there a while.
yeah.
That was a big move for me. Like when I got a taste of it when I moved to the UK, obviously. Like you can't get more different from, I don't know what Victoria is, 300,000 people to London, which is like its own country. That was amazing. That was a breath of fresh air, being 21 at the time and being like, oh, the whole world is out there.
Yeah.
Like I'm living literally on a little island on a rock that built us, that raised us, that got us started in the nest. But it's like, my God, do I have to get off of this island, right?
Right.
There's the whole world out there. So,
and I kind of have that relationship with Peru and Latin America now. Now I'm like, doing shows in Mexico and stuff. And yeah, with making more music in Spanish, it's fueling something, and there's more of a response that I get. Well, I also get a response here, but that's definitely, I feel like I'm getting that from going to Latin America for sure.
Do you have ways of like monitoring your not social media engagement, but how you can see on different platforms like where you're getting your most streams? Like, are you conscious of that? Are you monitoring that regularly?
Yeah, I am.
What countries are kind of feeling you the most?
Yeah, it was cool. And when the Kipu's album came out, it was like, I think the country that was listening to the most was France.
Crazy.
And then Germany, and then it was kind of like France and Germany, and then like Switzerland, and like Israel as well, and then it was Mexico. Mexico was like boom,
yeah,
and then like Chile, and then it was crazy, and then now it's Canada. It's like it's just like it's cool to watch those algorithms. It's like, oh shit.
Probably not what you expect.
No, not at all.
Not like you're not in your mind like targeting France when you're making that. Yeah.
But it's a good way to like reflect and be like, okay, or if you want to like organize a tour or whatever. And
there you go. Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, take that information and use it to your advantage for touring. Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
People take
or
notes.
releases or whatever. Yeah. There's so much you can do.
We're really lucky to have those tools.
Oh my God.
We didn't have those when we were coming up. Like,
I know, man. We would have like lost our minds if we were like, oh, someone's listening to my album in France. Like, like
yeah, we were lucky if we were stoked to sell like 4 CDs after a set. You know what I mean? To like people we knew.
Totally.
Like new fans most of the time. Sometimes they were, but you know what I mean? Like it's just a whole nother world now. What people have access to. It's really cool. Really, really cool time to be making music with all of the resources and technology that we have now. It's amazing. Before we get you out of here, I was hoping we could get like a beatbox little set
Sure.
from you. You can do whatever you want. You can make some noises. You can just make a beat. I've got you hooked up to the distressor, so go loud if you want to.
Jesse. All right.
Do your thing. You got the floor.
Beatboxing sitting down is interesting. Okay. ¿Cómo se suena? ¿Cómo se suena? ¿Cómo se suena la cum la 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 la? ¿Cómo se suena la cumbia? Como pena como pena como pena ¿Cómo se suena la cumbia? ¿Cómo se suena la cumbia?
Fuck yeah.
Thanks, man.
Unreal. Thanks for doing that.
A little rusty on that one. That one's hard, going from the singing and
There's a bunch. If that was a session in Logic, that'd be like 16 tracks of
right.
sounds,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Insane. I'm so glad we did this. This will not be the last time. Anytime you're in the city,
I'm down, totally down to another one. I feel
you
like we
got the floor, you got the seat. We'll do this again.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I was like feeling it's just getting warmed up. I'm like, I feel like I do this for like another.
Oh yeah,
2 hours.
easy. Tell everybody where they can find you online. Tell them your socials and where the music's at.
Yeah, so Nostic and Nikki on Instagram, you can follow. We're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on all the things. If you want to kind of be more like updated with my other band, it's La Chuparosa. That's LACHUPAROSA. Nostic and Nikki is NOSTIC. Ampersand, so the N symbol, NICKI. And then if you kind of want to follow all of it, then I would just recommend looking for Nostic Marco on Instagram. And it's kind of like amalgamation of everything.
Nostic Marco. That'll kind of
Nostic
lead
Marco.
everybody down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, totally.
All the good stuff. Cool, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Love you, bro.
Love
And
you too, man.
you've been such a huge part of my life. I think that goes without saying. I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done for me over the years, and how much you've inspired me, and I can't wait to see all the great things that you're gonna do.
Vice versa. Don't make me cry.
Okay, one love.
One love.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you so much. Peace.
Peace.